challenges that we have to overcome and maybe explain ourselves. But the good thing, like through the last few years, we got huge chances in letting the world know us. For me, myself, I got to go to the UN or visit other countries, and either political or culture events. They always have these ideas that we live in a desert with a lot of oppression, and we don't have driving license, we don't have education. But once they meet us, they know a lot about us from just one person. We get to be ambassadors of the country or the region. So as in our books, we inherit this like ideas and costumes and traditions, and we put it out there for those people, either by talks or in books. We let them know like who we are today. And still we perceive our history and the good things or the bad things, but we try to show them how we are today and what the future holds for us as a region or as for Bahrain itself. So we try to be like the best ambassadors that deliver the best picture of how it is to be Bahraini youth or Khaliji youth, and what the opportunities we're getting today. We're having a lot to share, and we're having a lot to talk about. So I've been privileged to see mostly positive situation and like knowing about Bahrain, about through the sports or Formula One or whatever. They know that Bahrain or Emirates or Saudi Arabia, they're developing in a great way.
Thank you so much, Fatema. Of course, we'll be get back to all this very interesting point, and of course of the matter of the Arab writers as a representative of their country. This is very important point. So we'll get back to this point, but first I keep the floor to Abdullah Al Jumah as a traveler over the world to give us his feedback about this first team, history in the present. Abdullah.
Well, thank you, Saeed, for having us, and have a good evening, ladies, and thank you for the whole teams of Alliance Française through the countries. For me, history and present is simply how I see it. Is there like a growing narrative among the youth in the GCC countries, be it the authors or other people? We are creating our own perspective of the present we live in, and not necessarily linked to certain historical events. For example, a lot of people here didn't feel the legacy of a lot of colonialism or authors from other Arab countries. They're actually creating their own ideas of how we look the changes that we're going through our countries. I know this sounds cliche, but actually in Saudi Arabia, we're actually going through massive changes. Even the Saudi, asked me years ago, I would say in the future. So I think a massive challenge for us as an author, young authors, to actually reflect the feelings of us and as individuals or as the general public towards these changes and how they are going forward to the future. And this is not an easy task. And I think the generations past, they had their own problems, their own issues to deal with that not necessarily linked to our daily life today. It's a whole new world full of information. It's very difficult to hide the truth. It's just very difficult to convey a rather good message to actually reflect our norms and how we are going actually towards the future. You guys can hear me?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Thank you, Abdullah. Thank you so much for your answer. Let's go to another question, because we are talking about history, about present, about past. So, guys, you are the representative of new generation of writers. It's evident. So according to you, what change could you spot between the previous generation of authors and in your country compared to your point of view as or your generation of authors? What is the contact with this generation? What is the shift? So let's start with Fatema.
Sure. I think today's authors community, I think we have a greater support system, unlike the previous generations. A few years back, we got a chance to do a seminar for older authors to talk about their experiences. I found a lot of negativity, if I have to say, talking about the new writers. They find it's like very different from their experience back then. So I think they find the new books like it's weaker, or they don't like the ideas because now Arabs, they don't have the limits that the previous generation had. So they're open-minded and open to the world. So they always have like no limits in writing. But still, I think we are also privileged that we get the chance to have our books reach more greater regions than our previous authors. As for myself, I was privileged to have my book go into the US or Turkey or Iraq or beside the Gulf countries. So I think we get better chances from the previous generation. So it changed a lot. So yeah.
Okay, thank you, Fatema, for your answer. Dubai.
Yes, I mean, that's a very interesting question because, we also have to be very, I think, cognizant of the fact that older generations of Arab writers existed in a vastly different time than ours. And I'm not just talking about, the emergence of social media. I'm also talking about the political backdrop that they operated in as writers in different parts of the Arab world. So you had, whether they were young writers that like to associate themselves with the Nasirism school of thought, or maybe perhaps the Ba'athist school of thought, those modes of association really determined the kind of writing that older generations of Arabs have produced. And I don't think it would be too much of a sweeping generalization to say that older generations of Arabs have gone through waves of disappointment that we haven't been through, at least firsthand with. And I think particularly in pertaining to, the Arab dream, right? The Arab unity. And you see these themes dominating the writing of amazing thought leaders like Nazar Qabbani or Kanafani or Mahmoud Darwish. You see those themes that have occupied so much of their daily lives and have been reflected in their poetry or their writing or their novels. Whereas with this new generation, I think, and again, we can debate if this is a good thing or not, but I think we have less heavy subjects or burdens to bear than older generations have. I think we should carry those burdens, definitely. But the question of if we should versus what the reality is an entirely different discussion. But we're entering a very interesting experimental phase, I would say, as a new generation of writers in the Gulf and in the Arab world. And I think this question would more accurately be answered with us looking backwards in a few years' time, from my point of view.
Okay, thank you, Dubai. Abdullah Al Jumah.
Yeah, so I would argue in favor of Fatema. Fatema said something very interesting. So a lot of young people, they didn't find something relatable in the writings of the old generation nowadays. So that's why a lot of people, they stop reading for like very famous, notable Arabic writers. And I would also disagree with Dubai, especially in the GCC countries. A lot of people, they don't have the legacy of or influence of like previous old school of thoughts in the Arab world, especially that comes from Egypt or the northern Arab countries and such. I think we are a generation that's occupied by certain issues and current problems that we are in need to deal with, rather than continuing the legacy of a previous generation. So I think in the GCC countries, a phenomenon is happening now. A lot of young authors, whether be it a good thing or not, they're actually filling the roof ships of amazing books, reflecting their daily lives, their thoughts. And I remember me and Dubai, we had this discussion a few days ago, whether it's a good thing or not to write in your own local dialect, which is I oppose myself. But a lot of young writers now, they argue in favor because they think there's actual reflection of their language, their way of seeing life around them.
May I respond to my fellow panelists? I think these are very interesting points that you bring up, but if I may also ask a question in return, I'm very interested to hear your thoughts on this. When you say that our generation of Gulf countries, don't care about issues in other contexts, like, the history of Egypt, for example, is it we're not interested, or is it more we are ignorant of the history or our collective history as a people? There's a difference between us saying, we're a new generation, we don't care about the past, and there's a difference when we haven't read enough of our history to realize that our past, present, and future are not only interconnected, but also intertwined. And it would be, I argue, a very dangerous way of thinking to assume that the problems that have existed in other Arab countries in the past are not burdens that we as a generation also should be carrying in the present and the future, whether we're in the Gulf or in other parts of the MENA region.
To answer this, I would simply say, like, if you say the history of the Arab countries, it's not the same. Like, what happened in Egypt 100 years ago doesn't necessarily reflect me here in Saudi Arabia. And I think this is general narrative that we don't really see it in practical terms in Saudi Arabia or in the GCC countries. You began your speech talking about Napoleonic invasion of Egypt, which is an amazing story. Things happened there, but didn't necessarily affected us here in Saudi Arabia. So I think it's not being ignorant or not actually interested in what's happening in other countries in the Arab world, but rather being more interested in what's happening in my country. Like Saudi Arabia didn't have a lot of authors 100 years ago, and I think it's just a great opportunity for us to take the lead, be pioneers in writing our own histories, writing our own literature in the way we see it right. It's not being ignorant or not interested in other countries. It definitely is something being interesting in ours.
Yeah, these are very valid points. I can continue the discussion, but I don't know if Said wants to move in.
No, it's perfect. To me, it's perfect. So yeah, it's perfect. So ladies and gents, we are really in presence of the lovely panelists and the lovely talk with Dubai Abulhoul from United Arab Emirates, writer, with Fatema Al Harbi from Bahrain and Abdullah Al Jumah from Saudi Arabia. So we have been talking about writers, okay, and generation and the past, and how to deal with the past, how to cope with this heavy past in this part of the world. So now let's talk about readers, because I am in Bahrain since 3 years, and since 3 years, I have been asking myself, I would like to meet readers. So I met a lot of readers here. So, but still to me something to know more. So in your country, respective country, I don't like the word book market, but what is, in your opinion, the rate or the level of readers in your respective country? And what is the contact and the relationship that we can have with your readers or readers for other writers, of course, could be Western or Arab or any part of the world. So what is the situation of readers in your respective country? So Dubai, maybe we can start with this if you don't mind. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, reading has always been a very, I think, lifelong endeavor for myself. It occupies a very central role in my life, and I think that is why I was even, able to be a writer. It was a very central role in my, not just my worldviews, but also, self-development as well. And I don't think that we have as many readers as we'd like, but I don't think that is also unique specifically to our countries or regions. I think the rise of social media has, subconsciously turned us into people that just want to read headlines. We just want to read summaries, and we just want to get information, but we don't really have time to digest it as knowledge. And I think that is very dangerous. It's one thing, reading is not just getting the information, it's also the process of, forming your own opinion of it as you read. So it's not just about getting the information, it's also this, internal debate you have with the text itself as you read. So I wish I had a, one size fits all cure to solving this issue of increasing readership amongst Arab youth. But I don't think it's as bad as we think. Honestly, from my experience at least.
Fatema?
For me, I always been a reader since I was a kid. The book fair trips, it was something we had to do each year with my parents. So I've always seen the situation in book fairs and the book outlets since I was a kid. So I could see the change through the years since I was like 6 years old or 7 years old until now. Until I published my first book in 2014, I attended the whole GCC book fairs. So I could see and meet up with readers and have one-on-one talks, and some readers buy the book and come the next day to talk to me, or even just message me on Instagram. So I think the last few years we had like much more readers than it used to be before, and I think it affected my books by having a lot of bestsellers through the years. Although technology is coming in and people can read through the phone or the laptop, but I think young generation are interested in reading, and especially interested in their people and local writers. And I found that not even in Bahrain, also in Saudi Arabia and Emirates or any other GCC country. So I think the attention is getting more and more for us.
Okay, thank you, Fatema. Abdullah.
Well, I will agree with what the lady said, especially Dubai. I second that. I think if you look at it, there's two extremes. One certain group of people, they want to take information very quickly. They want to read a few tweets or like a summary of a book. They would know that they're knowledgeable about a certain topic. And you have the other extreme, who are very, very sophisticated. They're reading more books. They are interested in having like a international translation of the books into Arabic. And I think there's a huge gap between them. And I think our job as an author is just to bridge this gap as much as possible, because these people are craving for knowledge, and these people are the public who actually, they should be knowledgeable about certain issues. And I think we're seeing these two shifts. We're not seeing a lot of efforts in bridging this gap and making more books or sources of knowledge available to these people together.
Thank you, Al Jumah. So we start this discussion with our past, with writers, new generation, previous older generations, readers. Let's add another point, which seems to me very, very important: translation, or if I might say, languages. as you can see in the current situation right now, we are speaking in English to introduce everything about literature and so on. So this is our reality, and this is convenient, of course, and we are doing our best to give a better understanding of our situation here in the GCC. So let's guys talk about languages translation in this region GCC. Dubai, I feel like you are in the starting box.
Yeah.
Always.
You will notice my backdrop has more English titles than Arabic, but that's a discussion.
To me, it's very important to, and I think for the attendance too.
Look, as you said, I think we need to have which we don't have much of, but we need to have very honest conversations in our region and amongst ourselves as a people, because, you know, yes, I would have loved to have written all my work in Arabic. Yes, I would have loved to have predominantly, you know, read books in Arabic, but we need to really come to terms with the reality of the state of the Arabic language and the factors that have led to its current state as well. So, you know, my first novel was entirely written in English, and I published it a very long time ago. I think I was 15. And, you know, when I did it, no one, or at least predominantly, the conversation wasn't, okay, what is the content of the book? It was, you did not write it in Arabic? How could you, you know? And it's the same people that also, you know, say that are the same people that don't know how to say, you know, 3 sentences in formal Arabic in one go. Yeah. So there's this sense, I feel, among different Arab generations, particularly maybe those a bit older than us, this sense of idealism when it comes to the Arabic language. It's as if you are a traitor if you choose another mode. And you know, English for many reasons, not ones that I personally advocate for, but have governed the reality of our global dialogue. Yeah. And it does not mean that we are less Arab if we choose other languages, be it English, French, etc. And, you know, I don't want to be the person that brings back, you know, everything to colonialism, but frankly, this is also a colonial legacy in the region. The term Middle East itself is a British colonial construct. The more accurate term for the region is West Asia and North Africa, but that's the term that the British chose when it comes to documenting about who we are as a people, and it stuck. So, you know, there are various factors. It's much more complicated than us as a generation, you know, letting go of our identity. And I think it's much, much deeper than that.
Exactly. Thank you, Dubai. Fatima?
Like for me, for me, I published my whole books in Arabic, but in reaching out for more countries and more readers, some publishing houses reached to me in translating my books in English and other languages, and I found this a unique opportunity because I know I've reached the Arab region. I want to other nationalities to know about my stories and Bahraini stories, and to get better picture of Bahrain through my books. So I guess translation is a nice thing to reach out to the world.
Yeah, totally. I agree with you about translation, to other languages. Abdullah, what is your situation, personal situation, and situation in Saudi?
Well, I've written 3 books. They're all in Arabic. I wrote them in Arabic, and my 4th book that I'm actually working at the moment, I'm writing it in a way that could be translated easily into Arabic and Spanish, because it's about my travels in Latin America. So I think, as you know, in translating books into Arabic is very important, but what's more important, it's for Arab authors to write books in Arabic, to expand the content in the Arabic language, and either be in novels or nonfiction and such. And I think, again, I agree with Dubai, like English now has become the language of the world. So you cannot just, chasing English but I think what's important is to create our content that's important for us as an Arab, and also important, as Fatima said, for people who are actually interested in our culture, or actually people interacting in our culture in business or socially or in tourism terms, or be it. I would encourage, I'd love to see more Arab writers writing in Arabic and also in other languages as well, because for international market, it's very important for Arab writers to actually translate their work into English or French or Spanish or whatever, or write in their foreign language as well. As Dubai said, writing in different languages doesn't make us less Arab in a way.
Also, if I might add one more point,
course.
I think one thing I am not proud of when it comes to the profession of writing in our regional context is it is always regarded as a side hobby. You know, it's almost, you know, unheard of for an author to say, you know, I'm a full-time author. It is not just in terms of financially, it is not sustainable, but it's also socially almost unacceptable. Like, what do you mean you just wake up every day and write? You know, get a real job. And that kind of attitude is very limiting when you see different contexts with countries that have authors that go on and they win Nobel Prizes in literature. And we ask ourselves, you know, how come only Najib Mahfouz is the only Arab in history to ever win a Nobel Prize in literature? And it honestly does go back to our societal attitudes towards taking writing as a profession seriously. You know, yes, you can juggle writing as a part-time job, but it's not easy. People just think, you know, you sit on a laptop and just write and you have coffee and, you know, it's a very Instagrammable setting, which it is, by the way. But that's just half, not even half of the work itself. So I think we need to have a very serious discussion about how seriously we need to take this profession if we want more writers that not only write in different languages, but also in Arabic as well.
Is there any like union or club or something official in your countries for authors, for writers?
Yes, so in the UAE we have
or society or community.
Yeah, in the UAE we have the Emirats Writers Union, and it is so generously supported by our leadership across all levels. I think the issue is not a issue of lacking a top-down support for writing as a profession. I think it's actually the opposite. It's a bottom-up problem, which is ironic because writing as a profession usually is a bottom-up approach. And so, yeah, I think it's also like the collective Gulf psyche that needs to be tackled when it comes to this kind of discussion.
Fatema, in Bahrain?
We do have the same thing as in UAE. We have the Bahraini Writers Union, and I think it's a society in Bahrain and supported by the government, and it's well known. I think it's more than 30 years old, or I don't know exactly, but they've been so supportive. And even when I won the Khalid bin Hamad award, they've invited us to talk about the experience and writing a novel in 24 hours. And we had some support from the older generation in Bahrain.
Okay, Abdullah is...
Well, I think in Saudi Arabia, the whole official culture structure has been reshuffled in the last year or so. So now we have the committees, we have authorities for writers and publishers, and I think they're actually just restarting, let's say, nowadays. And I was approached by them only like 2-3 weeks ago regarding the Riyadh Book Fair that's coming in October, and they're doing something very amazing, and looking forward for it.
Thank you. What as a resident in the GCC, me and my friends here, we noticed that this region is lively, is strongly lively region with dynamism. It's very nice to see that in several fields: art, literature, technology, too many fields. So let's talk about, to go deep in your heart, if I could say, what changes would you like for your literature to bring to this region? This region is dynamic, is lively region. You guys, what do you want to bring more with your literature, with books? So let's start with Abdullah.
You said decision?
Region in your with your book, what do you like to for your literature to bring to this region?
Okay, well, I just said before, like, I think we live in a world that is just full of immense data and information, and it won't be difficult in the future for someone just to know what's going on in these days. But what will be difficult for us to actually reflect the feelings of the people and how they live their daily life, adjusting to those changes, either be social changes, religious changes, political changes, I mean, you name it. And I think that will be the key challenge for us, to reflect it honestly and how we would personally see it in our daily life. And I think this is a novel challenge, very, very new. Like in the previous writers and older generations, they had different issues they deal with. And I think for us, this is very exciting and a new challenge that we're taking into our literature.
Fatema?
For me, the first thing I would like people when they read my books, I want them just to enjoy reading. If they hold my book, they're enjoying, they're imagining, they're going to a whole another world. This is the most important thing for me. But at the same time, I would love for the people to know more about Bahrain, because throughout my novels, I've always mentioned Bahrain and described some parts of Bahrain in a way that makes people want to see it and want to explore it. And in the same time also, I would like to deliver the young Bahraini woman voice, their issues, their struggles, their stories, through the novels, talking about their issues like mental health, their love life, their society, and more.
Okay, Dubai.
Yes, I'm very wary of saying, or I would say skeptical about blanket terms like changing the region or changing the Middle East. I think, that sounds great as a headline, but it also takes away, I think, from the nuance of literature and books and reading. And I think, if anything, what I hope my readers get from my work, be it my current or future books and articles, is really not an answer, but an additional question. I think that's what we need more of, texts and pieces of work that prompt the reader to ask more questions. I think we've had more than enough straight answers, or supposedly straight answers being kind of given to young people in the region. You can either be this or that. It means only this to be an Arab versus that. This tradition of non-questionable answers is one that I would hope I try to influence through my work. I would want younger people and older generations, frankly, to conclude reading my work being even more confused, being even having even more questions. No, really, because only when or at least that's my favorite type of book, right? I don't like a book that is very clear and very straightforward. I like the kind of book that makes me very angry towards the end of it, because only that way do you actually challenge the reader to think critically, perhaps more objectively, and really reflect on a lot of preconceived notions that we've always, I think, taken for granted as being the only truth. So I would hope to have more questions for my readers than answers.
Okay, so let's continue with you, Dubai. You published a series of 5 children's books. So let's talk now about the new generation, or the coming up generations, a future. Simple question. maybe not starting by why, but what incite you to write 5 books for children? What is the incentive in
It's interesting because all the 5 books belong to the same series, right? And when you say, I published for children, people think it's, the easiest thing in the world, right? It's just like 500 words and, someone just illustrates them. But actually, to me, writing for children is harder than writing for adults, because when you write for a child, you really have to do your research when it comes to the psychology of how the child receives the content. And I don't want to traumatize the children that read my books. The adults, I don't mind if they're traumatized, but the kids, I think it's a big responsibility. And I was tackling somewhat of a taboo subject throughout my series of books. So what I did was, again, I don't want to take too much of the panelists' time, but I grew up, and I think this is common across Gulf countries. We heard of stories of folk tales in the UAE society from our grandparents and their parents, and it was almost a common Gulf folklore of tales related to jinn or ghosts. And at the time, they were only said to scare children to sleep. But what I found so fascinating was no one documented these stories. And, it just hit me. I was in actually 3rd year of university when I started this project. Grimm's fairy tales have documented folk tales across Europe. The Grimm fairy tales are the reasons why we know Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty and these stories, but no one did a similar effort to folk tales in the Gulf. So you had them documented officially, but nothing that appeals to younger kids and generations and really takes those stories and makes them books. So they're always verbally passed down. So I had to trace back the origins of these stories, and, I can't carry on the legacy of scaring children to sleep. So I had to fix that issue, at least when it comes to these folktales. And I rewrote them with a very important theme in mind. And it relates to the questioning, why I write is to let people question. I took each story of every evil character and I gave them a backstory that they're only evil because others have judged them for looking like monsters, when really on the inside, they're actually very nice creatures. So I wanted to, 1, not traumatize kids, 2, let kids come to their own conclusion that they shouldn't judge others just because of how they look. And we shouldn't judge others just because society tells us that we should. And so, yeah, it's quite a loaded project. It's still ongoing, so there are more books coming out. But yeah, to simply answer your question, writing for children is actually much more difficult than writing for adults.
Dubai, I would like to underline the word responsibility. And I would like to ask Fatema and Abdullah Al Jumah, do you feel this kind of responsibility or the same responsibility or another kind of responsibility towards your readers or children or adults?
For me, I think we always have the responsibility, either through the society or just the literature. So we always have to be careful in having those limits that we can't exceed in writing in our books. So I think it's huge responsibility in writing and publishing. It's so burdening in thinking about, since I published my first book, I'm thinking, what would people say? What would people say about my books, about me, the writer? So it's a huge responsibility, I think, for me. I don't know about Abdullah.
Well, I mean, for me, in my previous books, I would agree with you guys. Like I had a lot of responsibility in my mind while writing, but now that I have grown older, I think I should have been less responsible. I don't write for children or young people. I'll write for adults, and I think they should have the right mind to judge themselves. Like in my previous books, when I talk about character that I met through my encounters and travel, sometimes I would change the sex from a girl to a guy, just for people not to get confused, or why he's talking to a girl, why he's in a hostel with a girl, you know. So and this is a very basic example. Other examples, be it in my previous book, I would remind the reader that then I prayed, then I woke up to prayer and stuff. And to my surprise, a lot of readers, they actually thank me to reminding them that I'm a Muslim, that I'm an Arab, and I'm putting my identity out there in Europe or elsewhere. And I think now that I should have done this, actually. And in my previous book, I'm not doing this, because I think people should accept my identity as is, and they would assume that what comes with it. And writers should reflect what actually see in their daily life, especially if they are writing nonfiction like myself. I'm writing basically what's happening in my daily life, in my travels. And I think I'm being less responsible, but in a good way.
Thank you, Abdullah Al Jumah. So we are having really a lovely talk. So I have a personal question to you, same question, responsibility, but another level. For Dubai, Abulhoul, Fatema Al Harbi, and Abdullah Al Jumah. At what moment you felt that I am a writer, I am responsible of something? Maybe words, maybe first reader, maybe anyway. At what time, at what moment, not at what moment you felt in your heart, in your mind, now facing myself, I am a writer, I have some responsibility. So let's start with Dubai.
Yeah, I think a lot about that, actually. So I'm grateful you brought it up today. I don't have a clear-cut answer to it, but I will guide you through my thinking process. So I also write op-eds, and op-eds related, to culture, social, soft power issues, depending on topic of the day, I guess. And some articles I've written that are very aggressive, they're very to the point. I when I write it, I think this needs to be written, this needs to be published, but then I give myself usually 2 days after I write, because I need to ask myself, will this piece of writing actually advance something positive, or would it actually just create controversy for the sake of controversy and you don't get anything done or accomplished? And that's a question I grapple with, maybe more so with nonfiction than fiction. And it is, what impact will this piece of writing, this compilation of words that I've amassed, would it, when it's out there in the world and it's no longer, just on my desktop, would it do more harm than good? And I say this because, we see, and this is not just unique to our socio-political context as a region in the Middle East, I think this exists everywhere. You do have a breed of writers that just would like controversy for the sake of controversy. And they kind of maybe, I think, accumulated their fame because of that reputation. I'm very aware to hopefully not be one of those in the future or present in terms of my writing career. But I do think, words can change things, and whether or not they're for the best or worse, it's up for debate and for the specific context, but they are a huge responsibility, and I think more so than we like to think.
Thank you, Dubai. Fatima?
For me, I would say once I published my first book and realized that my book is out there, people are taking pictures of my book in each country and telling me, I've read your book and it changed my mind on this or that. That made me realize that there is like a pieces of me in each country or in each house, either in Iraq or Yemen or KSA or Bahrain or whatever the country is. So it made me realize that I take with me huge responsibility in getting my book to different minds and perspectives, and it might affect them in a good way or a bad way, or it might bring for them good thoughts or bad thoughts. But I think I'm fortunate enough to have my voice reach so much, like thousands of people from different countries in the world.
Thank you, Fatema. Abdullah?
Well, for me, I think what pushed me into writing is just personal experience. And I think I was drawn into writing without me planning it. It was when I joined the university, after high school, I studied for a few months and I dropped out of university, and everybody felt bad for me. And everybody thought I was a failure in my life and I should go to seek other paths and stuff. So I wrote my first book that I published in 2009. It calls عظماء بلا مدارس, which is grades without schools. It talks about people who made their success out of formal education, which was my case at the time. I eventually rejoined the university and graduated, no problems. But what drawn me into writing in the first place, it's answering this question that everybody was shouting at me, that I was a failure, that was a dropout of university, and I didn't have a place in the society. And I think that goes to every author. Everybody has this a question that's to be answered, or when they start reading a lot of books, they would think, this author should have said so, or this author should argue so, but why shouldn't I? Why I should go out there and write my own book, answering the question, or trying to answer the question that everybody is wondering about.
Thank you, guys. What a lovely, lovely talk. And the time runs very, very fast because of you, because of this beautiful talk. So we have a couple of questions from the public. The first one is, are there any writers, books that influenced your writing or choice of subjects of genre matter? So it's a question for, can start, Fatema.
Sure. Throughout the years, since I was a kid, I've read a lot of genres and from different countries, not only from Bahrain, and translated books or either books in English. I think the whole reading process affected me growing up through the years. It's made me better with words, with understanding the writing process. So once I felt confident enough that I can write, which was like 22 years later, I felt like I can write a whole book with my own words, my own thoughts. So I don't think I've been affected by exact one person or one writer or one book. I think the whole process throughout the years have affected me as a person, and reading affected me into eventually being a writer.
Thank you. Dubai?
This is, I think, the hardest question you asked this evening. I mean, I'm looking back and like, okay, which one do I choose for this question? I think hands down, Edward Said's Orientalism. If anyone on this, any participants haven't read that book, please read it. Read the summary, whatever it takes. Just read Edward Said's theory on Orientalism, because that truly shaped how I look at the world, and particularly our part of the world. Another book he wrote after that was called Culture and Imperialism. I don't want to just cite his work. I'm trying to be diverse here. So I think a third recommendation is Sapiens by Yuval Harari. I think last year came out in Arabic. Please read it with an open mind. Yeah, I could speak, for a very long time about the best books I think everyone should read, but for now it's those three.
I agree with Dubai. It's just a very difficult question to answer. I never answered this question. I was influenced definitely by a lot of authors and writers, but it's just very difficult to say this particular book or this particular author has affected me much. As a way of writing and style, I think I was influenced by Rabi' Jabir. He's a Lebanese author. I really like his books, and also Ghazi Qsaybi. He's a Saudi author as well. He's a statesman as well, and I was influenced by him and his legacy. And yeah, that's what I could say about that.
Thank you. Fatima, would you like to add something?
No, that's
No, it's all. Okay. Okay. Another question: do you think there is a shortage of young Arab writers, especially in non-fictional genres?
I don't think there's a shortage of the amount of writers, Arab writers in nonfiction, but I do think there's a shortage of diverse opinions coming out of those writers. So you know, we need more critical thinking in our op-eds, and again, not for the sake of controversy, but for the sake of actually having a useful conversation following the publication of those pieces. So I would say it's not about the amount of writers as much as we need to work on encouraging diversity of thought amongst those writers.
Yeah, I agree with Dubai, but also I think if you're talking about non-fiction publishing, I mean, there is a huge lack of number of young authors. And if you think about it, even like, let's say, in the previous generation, there weren't a lot of Arab authors who actually dealt with a lot of issues, either be it for political restrictions or social restrictions and such. And I think the younger generation should look into the world and open eyes, as Dubai said, and encourage themselves to go and discuss issues that wasn't discussed before.
For me, I would agree with Dubai and Abdullah. And the thing is, for myself, I've known a lot of writers through the book fairs and so, but as they said, there's always some restrictions in some countries. I know some writers, they can't sell their books in the Arab region. They go and publish it in like the US or the UK. But I think we do need more diverse in the opinions and the stories.
Okay, thank you. I got another question, a little bit controversial question. So do you think that a real writer must have the courage to write and to talk about topics that people judge taboo?
Well, I think personally, this is the writer's job. I think someone asked themselves when they endure a writing career, if they want to write to be out there all the time, or they want to try to push the society further, or they want to seek this path to make money out of it, which is not the case in the Arab world, as Dubai mentioned earlier. And I think a writer's job is just to have the balance between things that they could actually talk about and things that you should not really be talked about in the public. I think it's just a key to have the good balance if you're trying to convey a certain message without actually trying to hurt people or diminish certain religious norms or social norms and such.
Okay. Dubai, you would like to?
Sure. I mean, I'm not one to, tell people how to do their jobs. Although I think always about how they should do their jobs. I just don't verbalize it as much as I want to. But again, going back to this trend of controversial writing, I think it needs to go back to the question of what will you get out of this controversial topic? If you want real social change, you're not going to get it by angering more conservative parts of society, and you kind of have this attitude of, no, I'm going to be controversial, I'm going to, change my society. No one's going to listen to you. Yeah, you need to understand that, collectively, everyone's voice matters and everyone's say matters when it comes to enacting actual, lasting, and sustainable social solutions to some of our most pressing problems. And I think we've seen this in without specifying or going into details, there were a lot of Western contexts that saw a rise in populism 2016 onwards, and the sort of rise of the quiet right. And it has been as a result of overt political correctness, yeah, and you cannot isolate people by just being controversial and hoping they join your bandwagon. So I think it really ultimately goes back to what the writer's motivation is. Do you just want to make headlines and become a hashtag in hopes that more people buy your books, or do you actually want to write something that would advance your societal context and wider space, I would say?
I would say from writing the first word from your book, the person decided to be a writer. They have to be courageous, because being a writer in our region, we get judged easily for our thoughts, for our ideas. So for me, like one of my books, I wanted to mention and talk more about women mental health. It's always a sensitive issue for us talking about mental health. So I wanted to focus on it and let people know through a story, not just like I'll talk about it medically, because I'm not a medical person. I'll tell a story about a girl and then talk about her mental health, and then let people like focus on this. It's a normal thing. It's happening through our society. So you always have to be courageous to tell a story that might the society not accept it, or they might find it not normal.
Also, if I may add one more point on this topic, I know your question was perhaps more about nonfiction, but actually you can get away with a lot more controversy when you write fiction, because at the end of the day you can say the character said that, not me. When you publish
Very true.
When you publish an op-ed in the newspaper, it's your opinion, it's me as Dvay. But when I insert a character in a random setting in a novel that's in the middle of the book, so hopefully those that reach that point of reading are open-minded enough to not be as angry as I think. You could get away with much more in fiction. And I think it was the Turkish author Elif Shafak who actually went to try in Turkey, and she said to the prosecutor, I did not say that. My character did. I'm not sure what happened or what the results or the verdict was, but tip to writers attending, use fiction more often than you would use nonfiction.
Okay, would like to add something? That's fine. Okay, so let's now go through the last question, because time is running. So the last question will be for the future. So Dubai, Abulhoul, Fatema Al Harbi, and Abdullah Al Jumah, what is your future plans, your objective, coming months or years?
I stopped writing for a few years. I think this is just the right time to start writing again. I will continue writing about my travels and also about my experiences in life, because I think we lack a lot of books documenting our daily life here in Saudi Arabia and the GCC countries. And I think it's very important for the second generation to actually know what was going in these times. I will just continue writing.
Thank you. Fatma?
For me, I've stopped writing since 2 years, since I published my fifth book. I wanted for myself to give more space for new ideas, new perspective, to read more and to learn more, and keep open mind to once I published my next book, I have a lot more to say and more rich experiences, and I want to grow as a person, as a writer. So my next book gets better. I hope so. We always want to get better.
We hope to. Dubai?
Yeah, that's a, I think, difficult question as well to address in detail, but I think we have a lot of work. A lot of work as societies, a lot of work as countries, and definitely a lot of work as a collective region. And not just in terms of literacy, but also in terms of the topics that we want our literary work to address, and to really look at a post-COVID reality. Yeah, like what are the spheres of influence that we can push the envelope on and take it a step further when it comes to enacting, you know, an increase in social awareness, a global viewpoint. You know, what does global even mean? Who gets to decide? So, you know, I used to think, you know, if you asked me a few years ago, I would tell you being young was my biggest obstacle. Past few months have shown me it's actually the greatest weapon, because we have so much to do, and I hope to have enough years and decades to be part of the solution. So I think it's to answer your question, I don't know what exactly I'll be doing in 10 years, but I know
Keep young.
I'm gonna be motivated to do it.
Great. So thank you so much. We have been listening and watching a webinar, History in the Present, with the lovely presence of Dubai Abulhoul from United Arab Emirates, Fatema Al Harbi from Bahrain, and Abdullah Al Jumah from Saudi Arabia. Thank you so much. This webinar is in collaboration with the Institut Français Abu Dhabi, the French Embassy in United Arab Emirates, Alliance Française, Arabie Saoudite, and the French Embassy in Saudi Arabia, and Alliance Française Bahrain. You are invited, of course, to visit us here in Bahrain. Fatima, we are neighbor, we are no problem, but Dubai Abulhoul and Abdullah Al Jumah, anytime you are welcome. Come to visit us, and this is the end of this great webinar. Thank you so much. Thank you to the attendant. We have been, I think, maybe 60 people, maybe more, watching on YouTube and Facebook and other lives. Thank you so much. And we will, I hope, organize other webinars and conferences with you in the future, which we can, if I can summarize on one word, this talk give us a joy that we are in the presence of something like you know, something new, and something give us like a better understanding about the GCC region, a better understanding of young Arab writers. So all this information are very, very, very important for our understanding, and it's help us to meet really your books and to understand your books better. So what we have to do now is to read again your books within your thought, and after this talk, to have better idea and to appreciate really your literature. So I invite everyone to read your books. This is the most important message tonight. Thank you so much, and hope see you again another time. مع السلامة.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Take care,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Bye-bye.